Welcome to the Art of Living podcast, and today we want to discuss the role of magic and occultism in science and technology. If you were able to go back in previous times and you were able to show people the technological advancements that we have now, they would be saying, you are a magician, you're practicing magic. Because if you see that from a mobile phone, a live picture, video can be beamed from across the world, then if that's not magic, what is it? And to talk about the role of magic in our technology and scientific advancements, I have our blogger from up north, Sheikh Nazim. Welcome, Sheikh Nazim.
Walaikum salam. Thanks for having me on. Nice
How are
to
you?
be here
Okay,
again.
excellent,
Yeah,
excellent.
that's
Today,
Qazi.
we're going to go straight into our topic today. I don't know whether you heard my
Mm-hmm.
introduction. That
Yeah, I
we
did.
went, wouldn't you say that's true? If those people were able
Mm.
to get a glimpse of the things that we have achieved today, they would be absolutely flabbergasted and said that this is magic.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, right off the bat, I'll start with you probably heard about an author, science fiction author called Arthur C. Clarke. He
Yes.
was basically into technology and very, very well known, high profile. He wrote a book called The Space Odyssey. And back in the 60s, he predicted by year 2000, people will have devices, handheld devices in the hand that
Hmm.
will be akin to magic. And he said the advancement of technology will be so much and such that it will be difficult to differentiate between magic and technology. That's how similar technology will reach, and we're heading towards that stage very, very fast. And
I would
just to
say,
take a few steps, yeah.
sorry, I was here. We were already there.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Well, in the near future, it's going to go even more advanced with nanotechnology and all the types of technology that are coming out. Recently, there was a article on the scientific journal in America where they've made a robot which is smaller than the grain of sand. Now you can imagine how the grain of sand is, even smaller than that, but they could put inside your body, and you could go and kill off many of the disease enzymes that grow in a person's body. So imagine how advanced technology is getting that we're itching day by day closer to magic. And just to take a few steps back, just to start off the discussion, the reason for today's topic is interesting because from our scriptures, the Quran and the Sunnah, we've heard many significant and amazing stories of how the unseen and spiritual world operate. We also learned how the demonic and the dark forces are also at play as well. So now this discussion essentially will be how we can see nuggets of truth even from people who practice occultism and people who are outright devil worshippers, and then look at the Islamic scriptures and how they, in a sense, tie together. Because sometimes when we look at purely always through the religious books, it puts off many people saying, "Oh, it's just gibberish. You're talking gibberish." But then, if you look at it in a different angle on the same lines, you'd see how it's not a matter of believing in the unseen or not. Whether you believe it or not, that's not the point. You're being affected by it day by day. Whether you're using your phone, whether you're using a TV screen or a laptop like we're using to discuss, magic has also had a part to play in this. Now, before we carry on, we got to establish the fact that the discussion does not mean technology and science are evil and we should shun it and we should never use it. They're the signs of the devil. That's not the point. The point
That,
is
that's
to take
exactly what I,
lessons.
that's exactly what I was going to
Yeah.
come in and say. What's so bad about the technology that we are now reaping the benefits from?
Exactly. So the point of it is just to make you aware of how there are other forces at play behind the shiny, glitzy laptop or the latest Samsung S22 you might have,
Hmm.
and how they came about has a huge influence on how we also lead our life. So now, if we go a few steps back,
Hmm.
right at the beginning of the 20th century, there was a fellow called Alistair Crowley, and he was a Oxford graduate, very intellectual, and he is the original author for the Satanic Bible. That character is so influential that his influence goes through the music industry, to the technology industry, as well as the scientific community. He wrote the book called the Satanic Bible, and before he wrote the book, he had to take large strides of sacrifice and effort. So in his biography, it's written that he had to do 40 days chilla in the pyramids of Giza in Egypt. So just on a side note as well, people who often complain and who think being religious is very tough and very difficult, even if you were to get the favors of the devil, he's not going to just say because you've said, "Oh, I support you, I believe in you." He's not going to give you special powers, or he's not going to give you the treasures of the dunya. Just because you said that, you have to prove yourself to him as well. So you have to go through very very rigorous and long, strenuous acts to show your dedication. So in his biography, Alistair Crowley says he went almost 40 days without any food or drink when he was in the pyramids of Giza. And then when he came out, he literally said, when I was in the chilla, I used to hear some figure come to me from the left-hand side and whisper in my ear to write things. And the primary principle of his teaching was, do as thou wilt, do whatever you want. So effectively, let your nafs run your world. Let your nafs loose, whatever. There's no right or wrong. As long as you find peace in whatever you do, it's allowed and it's fine. But anyway, the bottom line is on this point is, even if we were to put aside our religious duties, the dunya and the devilish side, they're not going to open their arms and just take you in. You still have to prove your point to them, and he's a prime example for that.
So
Yeah, he's one.
how does one prove their loyalty and friendship to the devils in order to win their favors?
Yeah, so I'll start with a few historical figures throughout the centuries. So
Excuse me.
after Aleister Crowley came major world events and how the dark forces influenced. Also, you could learn from that as well. We know the Nazis were heavily into the occult. One of the leaders of the Schwarzwaffe, the SS, called Heinrich Himmler, he was one of the figureheads of taking the Nazi movement global. So he, at one point during the 1939, sent a specific expedition to go to Tibet and learn from the lamas that are there of the secret knowledge and how that could be used to advance technologically over everybody else. So you got to understand at that time as well, people were basically just coming to terms with electricity and how the components of electricity actually worked. On the other hand, you had the Nazis with such advanced technology at that time. They were building rockets and talking about jet propulsion technology, where that was unheard of. And one of the pioneers of that was Von Rommel, who was then later shipped out to the US under Project Paperclip, which is a different discussion altogether. And he was also one of the leaders of the SS, which is the far right, very staunch, racist, and Aryan centric movement that existed during the Nazi phase. So before they made and got access to knowledge and how to advance technologically, they had to, again, like Alistair Crowley, prove themselves. So they had to first and foremost deny the existence of God and also do blasphemous acts against religious figures like the prophets and the pious of the past. Once they'd done that and went through rigorous rituals that Heinrich Himmler mentioned in one of the books, he even had a castle built specifically to hold occult rituals in Germany, and he painted a black sun on one of the floors that symbolized uh, some imagery in the occult world. So that was one instance where technology didn't just pop up into someone's head. There's unseen forces behind it that helped come about with the technology that we use today. Of course, we're not Luddites. We don't shun technology. Use it and we take the benefit from it. We're using this laptop. It came from technology. But the point of the discussion is just to make you aware. If you find addiction in something, or if you can't stop using it, there's a reason for it. They're made to influence you in a certain way. So then, if you further on come to the 1920s, there was a guy called Jack Parsons. He was the guy who invented the fuel technology to take rockets out of our stratosphere. He was called Jack Parsons, and in his autobiography, I've read it, and he clearly says that one day he had a dream, and in the dream he saw the Bali of Dajjal, essentially Dajjal, and in that dream, Dajjal said, "You will help me," and he was a open, proud Satanist. So you could see the parallels being built already, that people who excelled in technological advancement and invention, they were seeking to get help from other sources, not just intellectually, not just their education background, but they needed some other forces. Now, if you go further on, even before Alistair Crowley, you had Francis Bacon, who was the right hand man of Queen Elizabeth, and he was one of the proponents of the person and technology that came about called alchemy. Now, in his books and in his studies, he used to write very openly about the usefulness of occultism. He used to read many of these magical spell books, and the British Empire, in effect, was so reliant on him that Queen Elizabeth I, not the second one who just recently died, the first, would go to get advice from him very rigorously. And Francis Bacon writes that this was the occurrence of Queen Elizabeth. She had a scientific advisor called James Doe, who was very heavy into alchemy and all these supernatural feats.
Sheikh Nazar, one question that people listening would ask is, why now? The devil has always been there since the creation of human beings. So why is he influencing them now to launch these technological advancements? These things could have been done 200 years earlier. We could have had the internet 200 years ago, the laptops and whatever technological advancements that we have. So why do you think it's been so focused in this sort of 20th century?
Yeah, it's effectively because we're walking headlong into the end times. Because if you remember the prophetic hadith, Rasulullah said,
Yeah.
each generation that comes after, they'll be worse than the previous generations. So, previously, don't get me wrong, we did have people heavily involved in the occultism. If you just do a YouTube search, top 10 scientists from Isaac Newton and others, they were heavy into occultism as well. There's a clip on YouTube that shows how Isaac Newton, every third day, he would fast. And when somebody asked him, why do you do this? He goes, because to help me retune myself. And what does he mean by that? Retuning is building that connection with the satanic forces. And then, as you know, you could say the godfather of science is Sir Isaac Newton, they claim.
But
He's just one of them.
But fasting on a Thursday, the sunnah of our beloved Messenger, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So how do you know he wasn't doing that to get close to God and our beloved Messenger?
Yeah, because it's written in his actual books and his teachings that he do this to get supernatural help and realign himself with the spiritual entities that he believes in. So these are clear, open sources that you can learn from simple Google searches. So throughout the centuries, we've had historical figures, deep, 100% heavily engrossed in occultism.
Yeah.
So they're not. It's not a new phenomenon that is just started in the last 20th century. Mm-hmm. And why we didn't have technology back then and we have it now is again because of access to natural resources widely available. Back then, people didn't have the access to natural resources as we have now. And you got to remember as well, one of the signs of the end of times is the more closer we edge towards it, the more sophisticated people's lives will become, the technology and people's interaction. So that means, along with that as well, the sophistication of how people are led astray is also multiplied and increased. So hand in hand, it goes with the time you live in. So if you lived in the ancient time, there were technology used for that time that people were distracted from, in a sense, seduced.
So you could say that the earlier scientists like Isaac Newton were laying the foundations for the future scientists to advance the sort of progress that they had made. And one valid point that you
Exactly.
mentioned, is that maybe this pace of this technological advancement is increasing so rapidly because we are now edging towards the end of times, and the signs are all around us as described to us in our religious scriptures, and as our beloved messenger has given us in detail, that the biggest sort of signs are very much, the major signs are very much all around us and have come to sort of manifestation.
And just to go back to Alistair Crowley, what he said in his books, in fact, the Times magazine in New York um, claimed and gave him a title. He was known as the most wickedest man on earth. At one point, he even mentioned that Nauzubillah, he did molestation of children close up to 350 as part of his satanic ritual. Anyway, the point is, when he was writing his satanic Bible, he'd often say that he'd get whispers from the left hand side from a figure, and he even drew the figure that would come to him and inspire him. The point here is, he mentioned he'd get whispers all the time from the left hand side. Now, if you bring our Quran and Sunnah, you can see the parallels here. The Rasulullah said, when you wear your clothes, start from the right hand side.
Right. Yeah.
When you wash your body, start from the right hand side.
Yeah.
When you walk outside the door, start with your right foot. When you go into the toilet,
Eat.
go with your left foot. Eat with your right hand. So, and there's a parallel, strong parallel, if you look at it through this angle as well, how it ties nicely together like a hand in glove of the teaching of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now, sometimes we get clouded in thinking, oh, religious scriptures is so boring and mundane and it restricts us. But if you look at it in the other angle as well, it ties in with what we believe in already. So there's nuggets of truth. Even if you study these Satanists, you'll see the nuggets of truth from our teaching coming through their angles as well. So,
The Quran and Sunnah is the light. I use my right hand to describe the light which actually dispels the darkness of the evil forces, and it's also the
exactly.
antidote to all that evilness that is quite sort of pervasive around us now. And
Yes, yes.
with technology, basically we are given the tools to corrupt ourselves even further and get people addicted to even more devilish desires, habits, and addictions. Yes, technology is good, but would you say there's more harmful sort of effects of that rather than benefits?
Yeah, to answer that, I'll pick up a documentary you used to on Netflix called The Social Dilemma. And that documentary essentially covers ex employees of Facebook, of Twitter, of Instagram, etc., who have left those industries and now they're trying to wake people up. Many of them in that documentary, they clearly mention the concept that they got of these social media sites is from gambling machines. If you remember gambling machines in the back in the day, they used to work when you put some coins in and pull the lever and you get three images. If you've got three images that look the same, you win some money. But more than not, it always used to come up with either one image which is the same or two. So you put more money and keep on doing it. So one of the guys in that documentary mentioned when Mark Zuckerberg got the idea for Facebook, he got it from the gambling machine example. He wanted to create that sort of addiction, people who use social media. So effectively, when you're scrolling down with your thumb on Facebook, it gives you such an adrenaline rush, that dopamine kick, that you're constantly scrolling down and you don't want to put it down because they use the example is when you had a traditional newspaper, what did you do? When you opened it, you could read it from front to the end, and then what did you do? You put the newspaper down and you go on with your life. Social media is designed in such a way that if you keep on scrolling down on Facebook, on YouTube, on Twitter, or Instagram, any of the social media sites, it'll constantly keep on refreshing you with new content.
It becomes
So
insatiable.
Exactly. It becomes like a vicious cycle for you that you're stuck. Even if you had this important meeting to go to or an appointment to attend to, you end up becoming 10 minutes late because you just think, oh, I'll just watch our next video. Oh, I'll just watch our next video. Oh, that looks interesting. But you don't understand that the vicious cycle they created is designed purposefully to keep you hooked
We
because you
dis-
are their customer.
we discussed
Yeah.
this in detail in a recent podcast about the addictions of social media and how people need to try and people are trying to detoxify, and we shared some tips. And one thing I mentioned specifically about social media, it's actually instrumental now in the breakdown of family relationships and communications, is because in the same house you can have people who, rather than communicating with each other, they spend more time online, engaged with people far away. And the best example of that for us to see is, let's say when you go to a function, it could be a wedding or a party, there's a table, a round table of 10 people. Vast majority will be engaged on their devices, talking to somebody online who's far away, rather than physically engaging with the person who's physically sitting next to them.
That's so true. So it ties in nicely with what we were discussing.
Yeah,
The way the dark forces work, oftentimes you won't get the nuances, you won't see the subtle differences.
yeah,
But there are reasons why you act in a certain way in your life, why you find certain things interesting as opposed to other things. So I'll also go back to the music and the Hollywood industry as well. Many of the movies, many of the cartoons even
yeah,
now that are being made is coming into the mainstream where you have it's cool to look bad. Back in the days, bad was seen as bad, but
yeah.
now it's cool to be bad. You have, for example, in The Simpsons, Bart Simpson is portrayed as a person who is cool, whereas his sister, who is intellectual, Lisa Simpson, she is conveyed as a nerd, as a person who is boring. So it's cool to be bad. And now you had recent movies come out, The Maleficent, for example, where they have these actual devils being shown to children as cool characters.
And
So there's
beautiful
a
characters.
yeah, exactly. There's a paradigm shift happening.
Yeah,
The thought process of the general masses is being shifted
yeah,
to see good as evil and evil as cool and good.
yeah,
So
yeah.
this is where we're heading to with all this technology. But like I said earlier as well, it's good to reiterate technology and science in itself completely isn't bad. It's how we use it that leads to where we go. That is the end, the bad point, and the end where we end up with.
I mean, you
So
mentioned
as I was saying, yeah,
Maleficent. I mean, that was the one with Angelina Jolie playing some sort of a witch.
yeah,
But normally,
yeah,
previously, witches were played by old, like really ugly, tired, haggard-looking type of women. But here, look how they portrayed the witch as somebody so beautiful, so well, like in a beautiful body, so people can actually like them rather than dislike them. And the recent other one example was the new Roald Dahl movie, The Witches. The witches there again were a group of beautiful women. Yeah,
yeah.
and
So
and
you
go.
show the
Sorry,
yeah, you
carry on.
show the paradigm shift of the masses already being
Yeah,
moved in a certain way in preparation for the Dajjal, coming of Dajjal. And going back to what I said earlier, you had Jack Parson literally openly admitting that he saw in his dream Dajjal saying, "You will help me." So, what further proof do we need that technological advancement is also a akin and a sign towards the coming of the Dajjal as well? It's basically laying the foundation. So, when he comes, we heard the hadith, isn't it, that Dajjal will go around the world preaching his messages. How will he do this? He'll need some technology to be able to
yeah,
do this.
yeah,
So we're
yeah,
heading towards that phase whereby you could travel from Manchester to New York now these days within 2 hours to get in such planes up.
yeah,
So we
yeah.
won't be surprised that he'll be able to do that in a faster capacity.
In the Quran, we are told that our Lord is not one-eyed, and we are clearly sort of told the physical description of the Masiha Dajjal. When he comes, he will have one eye. And as you can see for yourself, there's a huge rampant manifestation of this sort of dark, devilish entity, Dajjal, in Hollywood, with all this one-eye symbolism and one-eye characters and one-eye sort of the hallmarks of the devil as such.
Yeah, so again, people in that front will say, "Oh, these guys are talking about conspiracy theories," but conspiracy theories only remain conspiracy and theories when there's no factual evidence to back it up.
Yeah,
Now we're literally seeing it with our physical eyes how the paradigm shift is happening in mainstream culture. So,
Yeah.
for example, now we're also seeing the introduction of pornography and all the obscene nature in movies, in
That's
even cartoons as well. You'd be surprised
I was coming
how
on
they
to
like,
that.
yeah. So there's a huge shift already happening. The foundation being laid, but then again, it's all good to curse the darkness, isn't it? You need to be a light to finish the darkness. So the point of our discussion effectively is just to start people waking up within our community first and foremost, and realize that the teaching we've received from the Mashayikh, from the Awliya and the Salihin, they're not just religious gibberish that people, old folks, kept on going on about it. There's actual real life eventual consequences that me and you are facing. And now we're literally seeing these forces come out in the open and admit it openly. Yes, I am a satanic worshiper. Yes, I do believe in X, Y, and Z.
I mean, just we just have to analyze just mine and your life. I know you're probably older than me, and when you were younger, when you were younger, you saw how television, nudity on television was restricted, regulated. There was a 9 o'clock watershed, and how over the years the devil, the TV producers and directors and filmmakers have been consistently, to the inspiration from the devil, been pushing those boundaries again and again and again as to what is allowed now as normal would have been impossible back in even 20, 30 years ago. And look at the level of depravity that is now shown to people on the internet that people have got access to. I've often said that, again, this is a program we can talk with. Just on this subject, we've talked about for hours, that previous generations and civilizations may never ever have looked at an image of a naked woman. But here, in one sitting afternoon, 1 hour, half an hour, a person can be exposed to so much nudity that previous generations would never have seen in a lifetime. So can you imagine the effect that's having on our psyche?
Yeah, exactly. So, just give you an example. Imam Shafi one time mentioned he was in a bazaar and there was a woman that walked in front of him, and without intention, naturally, his eye fell on the low calf of the woman's leg, and because of that sight, he said in his own words he forgot many of the hadiths that he remembered. So he eventually realized as soon how detrimental and evil glances can be, that such an alim and a man of Allah, if that's the effect it had on him, what about me and you who are more exposed to more graphical nature of, you know, pornography and sexual imagery day by day? When you look at the billboard, even these days, even if you lower your head and try to keep your head low and not look at nothing,
You've already
you
been
have
exposed to
magazines
it.
on the floor.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So there's rarely any instances where you not face these, I'd say, pre-planned and, in a sense, um, made, designed outcomes that we're facing this day and age, you see. So it goes back to what we started off with, that the devilish forces back in the day, yes, they were working behind the scenes. Now they're openly doing it in front of our eyes. We don't need to keep believing in the unseen. We're literally seeing the unseen unfold before our very eyes through
Absolutely.
the agents of the devils, like people like Jack Parsons, you have Francis Bacon, Arthur C. Clarke. These guys are open Satanists that they mentioned in their books. And yes, we literally read magic spell books. I know it sounds do la la, but it's real. They did actually go through the annals of history, searching for these magical spell books that they could use and create alchemy and etc. So there's nothing hidden anymore. It's all becoming apparent. And also, I'd like to add as well, because Prophet said, near the end of times, the Dajjalic force will be so credible that you'll be able to see them with your own eyes. So now, as we know, the prophetic hadith is that every human being has a devil with him, who whispers, who knows him more life than the person himself. Near the end of time, those devils that are with us, they start becoming apparent with our physical eyes. We'll be able to see them. And so our advancement through the scientific community and the technology is leading towards those paths where we'll literally be able to see the devilish forces that are around us. So there's no longer a point of believing in the unseen or not. They're all submerging into one end, and we're heading towards that.
Focusing, going back to technological advances, where do you think Mark Zuckerberg's plan of the metaverse fits into all this as well?
Yeah, basically, we don't need to have an idea. We can literally see where this is leading to. There's a movie out called Ready Player One, whereby there's a guy who leads his life literally in the virtual world. He puts on a headset, and the world that he enters, he wants to live there 24/7. He has his own adventures, etc. When he takes the headset off
Yeah.
and then he looks around, the movie actually shows how the state of his real life is literally the windows are broken, there's no curtains, he's living in a dump. And that's not just his case, but when the guy goes out literally to get food, to do basic necessities, other people also living in those slums, those poor conditions. Effectively, this is where metaverse will lead to more desensitization of people. So when they see more violence, when they see more pornography, and when they see more, you could say, satanic forces working, they'll become more desensitized to it, so that when literally the devil comes in front of me and you and say, look, believe in me, we'll say, doesn't matter, yeah, so what? I believe in the guy, let him do whatever he wants, as long as I can enjoy myself.
I've said
So
that
the
many
point of it
times.
is, yeah.
Yeah.
So
That
the
a lot
point
of the
is, we don't
kids.
really need to.
Sorry, we keep talking over each other.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
carry on.
yeah. No, no, it's fine. Carry on. You just sometimes I hear you 2 seconds later.
Okay, not to worry. This is what I say. A lot of the younger generation is being brainwashed already. Like, look at the whole genre of superhero, these sort of Marvel movies, these other sort of supernatural type of movies. They are being brainwashed into accepting that these sort of outer forces of evil, when they do manifest, they are real, they are part of your life because you've been exposed to them from childhood. And for my own self personally, is I always say that when we were young, when we used to watch horror movies, which we all did, they used to have this element of fear on our psyche, and they'll be so entrenched, and even it sort of has an effect on you even throughout sort of adulthood. Alhamdulillah, not now anymore for myself personally, but some part of your adulthood, you still fear these sort of ghosts and devils and horror movies you've seen, because it's a trick of the shayateen, the devils, to keep you living under fear.
Yeah, just to maybe wrap up our discussion, just to go back to our start of the point of discussion, you can see how religious scriptures have influenced pop culture as well. Just on the point you raised about superheroes, the idea of Superman, the creator of it,
Yeah.
recently died 3 years ago. He got the idea of Superman from Isa alayhi salam.
Okay.
His point, if you look at the story of Superman, he at one point dies and then comes back. The
Yeah.
world becomes hopeless. So that is in fact a retelling of the story of Isa alayhi salam, when you will come back to earth with his powers and reunify the world against the forces of evil. And also on the point of Apple, which is the world's most expensive company, the idea of the Apple company, Steve Jobs, he literally mentioned he got the concept of the bitten apple when Adam Islam ate the apple, because in Bible he mentioned the fruit that Adam Islam ate was an apple. So the concept of the Apple technology that you see the logo, he has a bitten apple, isn't it? So that's where the
Yes.
idea comes from. That is to notify the event that Adam al-Islam went through. That's where you got the idea of the Apple technology and the logo from.
Amazing. Not
So
many people know
going
that.
back to where we started from our discussion, we end up nicely. The same point is our religious scriptures, whether you look at it from a Christian point of view, the Jewish point of view, or the Muslim, our Muslim point of view, religious scriptures have heavily influenced pop culture, whether that's the good way or the evil way. Remember, in this world, there's two forces at play. This is the good versus the evil. Now it's up to you to choose where you want to be. There's no
So,
third place.
so you say
Either you're with the pious.
Aleister Crowley's influence is still very, very strongly and pervasively sort of holding over into the current music industry.
Yeah. So basically, Aleister Crowley, when he wrote the book, there's another guy that came later on called Anton LaVey. He's from California. He wrote the updated version of the Satanic Bible. And Anton LaVey is basically the figurehead who influenced all the music industry and the Hollywood industry. Many of the leading scientists, the founder of scientism, N. Ron Hubbard, the founder of Scientology,
Scientology, yeah.
he also, yeah, he is also work hand in hand, again, going to Jack Parsons. See, all these instrumental figures, they're always coming back to one source, which is the demonic forces being used to get ahead in the dunya. So I'm not saying everybody who's advanced and very clever in the dunya use demonic forces. What we're discussing here is the point at which technology can grip you in a fear that you can not live without these sort of technologies. That people now they can't live without technology. They say if you ask an average Joby that can you live without your phone for 24 hours, they said, are you insane? It's impossible these days. So that level of addiction that people have got to is, in a sense, mental slavery we're being tied into already, just in preparation for the ultimate coming of the Jal, the demonic forces that come
Wow.
before us.
Wow.
So as
You
I was
know,
saying, Anton LaVey
mhm.
is the figurehead who taught many of these Hollywood figures, from Tom Cruise to John Travolta, all these science of numerology. Another one is Madonna, and they often use figures of 11. So you see like 11, 22, 33, 36. This is where the concept of Freemason comes from, the 33rd degree Freemason. Why they do this is because there's a science called numerology, where if you know the dark arts inside it, the occultists use, then you could have certain powers that at your will. So now, if you look at again, bringing back our discussion to the scriptures, if you look at the more detained that we use, the three codes that we read, Kul Falak, Close, Biflak, Close, Binas, they also have 11 ayahs. Why? Because
Mashallah.
again, it's parallel. It's fighting. It's fighting against demonic forces that are trying to influence our lives. So whether me and you like it or not, or the viewers like it or not, there's two wars happening here in the unseen world. That's becoming more and more apparent. You choose the camp you want to be in.
Wow. So the very thing that we are enjoying, which is our mobile phones and addicted to this technology, is what is being used to wage the war on us and to enslave us and to ultimately try and destroy us. Sounds very strong, but the evidence and what is happening around us is quite visible for everybody to see that we are living truly in dark times because of this technology. It seems like the devil has become enlivened. That's the word I was looking for. Through these tools to control people and destroy them. That's why there's more and more people getting addicted to gambling, pornography, all sorts of other addictions. So again, this is such a vast topic. We're not going to be able to deal with every facet of this just in one sitting. So inshallah, this debate will continue again, no doubt. But just for
Yeah,
today, I would like
discussion.
to this discussion, this conversation, and it
Yeah,
is enlightening of the minds of our viewers and our listeners. Inshallah, we will continue again. And as I said, there's so much to talk about. But for now, Jazakallah for your time, and inshallah, we'll see you again.